Welcome, petrol heads. What's up? We have a very special guest. This is someone who, with the Porsche 987, beat a McLaren 12C and a Corvette C8 and a 992 911. Petrol heads, please welcome My Name Ideas Were Taken, Michael Hallock.
Oh, thank you for having me.
What really made me interested was when I saw your design. You basically made this Porsche. The one that's right behind you. It's not the
Yeah,
987, it's a 997, right?
yeah, correct. 997.
C4, but it's an RS. That's what you made it into.
Yeah, it's a RS, but yeah, it is. Yep.
So cool, man. I was interested because when people talk about Touge cars and what's the best one to get, there's usually like, if you're gonna talk about Porsche, the RS is very hard and the base one is very soft and
Yeah.
doesn't have the air of the RS. And I won't lie, this might be also my dream build.
Yeah.
Tell me about it.
Well, so I had the 987 Boxster that you mentioned, and I absolutely love that car. I wanted something that had around that 300 horsepower mark, something that was nimble, something that was mid-engine, because I enjoy autocross. I enjoy driving in the mountains, and to me, that was the
Yeah.
perfect recipe. Just mid-engine, rear-wheel drive, manual. And then my daughter was born, and just I didn't drive it as much. If we were going to go somewhere, we were probably going to take the WRX. And I kind of got out of doing as many track days and stuff. And so I thought, I want to be able to still have that Porsche sports car experience, but share it
Yeah.
with my whole family. And so I was very motivated to get a 911. But I did have some criteria for that. So obviously, it still had to be manual. And because I was going to be giving up having a mid-engine roadster, I wanted something that was all-wheel drive. My WRX is all-wheel drive. My
Awesome.
C30, I converted that to all-wheel drive. Like I love all-wheel drive cars, and so that sort of narrowed my search down to the C4, the C4S, or the 911 Turbo. Um, Went and test drove a turbo, and I mean, I was grinning from ear to ear, but I immediately thought this car is too fast. I'm going to get in too much trouble with this thing. And especially
Yeah.
for like the tight mountain roads, I want to still be able to floor it when I want to, not feel like I'm
Yeah,
constantly
exactly.
modulating the throttle. Um, so I thought, well, you know what? If I can't get the fastest Porsche that they made, I want to get the slowest. And so my search kind of continued to find a base. And that's when I came across this. And like I said, the reason I wanted it was because it was manual, it's all wheel drive, it's the Porsche experience, but it
Oh,
has a tiny
definitely.
back seat. And that tiny back seat is where I put my car seat and I put my daughter, and she loves it.
Yeah. So cool. So that's awesome, man. Yeah, when she
Yeah.
grows up, she's gonna be a petrolhead then.
I think she already is at this point.
Oh.
But I always love the appearance of the GT3 RS. I mean, to me, that's like perfection. And I thought,
It is. Yeah, it is.
you can buy all of the parts for the GT3 RS, like all of the aero parts, and you can put them on any 911. So I thought, well, I can get the wing, I can get the front lip, I can get the side splitters and the canards and just everything, and slowly piece it all together. And so that's why I call this car the C4 RS.
RS.
Yeah, because it's a Carrera 4, but with all the
So
RS
cool,
aero
man.
parts.
That's fascinating. So you had this plan in mind for a long time, like before you bought the car.
Yeah, yeah. When the last couple of cars that I've bought, I've kind of had a vision of what I wanted to turn it into by the time I
Mm.
would consider it a finished build. And so, yeah, I definitely had this in mind. I wasn't for sure gonna wrap the car blue. This is actually a black
Mm.
car underneath, but I've wrapped most of my cars, and I wanted to change up the color for an event that I held last year just to surprise my friends. But now that the
Mm.
blue is on there, I love it. So that's probably going to stay.
Yeah. Yeah, no, it suits it.
Yeah.
Really suits it. I love that rear wing.
Thank you.
How's it been to attack on a mountain pass, autocross and all? How's the handling feel? Because it's
So
softer
it
than
is
the GT3 RS.
Yeah, obviously it's softer. So I did upgrade the struts, and I put H&R lowering springs on it, so it's a little bit stiffer, but it's still fairly comfortable for driving on the road. I'll say in autocross, that's probably the only time that I missed the Boxster because that 987. I mean, it's a shorter wheelbase, and being mid-engine, it has a lower polar moment of inertia, so that thing would just whip around like nothing.
You you
Um,
drove that thing like a rocket.
well, thank
Honestly,
you. I mean, I was milking it for all it had.
what I was thinking was, is he massacring everyone because he's so good, or is he only posting the ones where he wins?
It's probably, I'm not going to take all the credit for it, but I think compared to some of the cars I'm up against there, some of them might be a little timid to push their car too hard. But yeah, it was
Yeah.
I definitely miss the 987 when I'm doing autocross. But as soon as I go out on the mountain roads, like hands down, this is one of the best cars I've ever driven. And one of the
Wow,
weirdest
wow,
things
wow.
for me, like I was so used, like I started with a front engine, front wheel drive car. It was a Volvo
Mm,
S40. And then I got into my Volvo C30, which was a little bit lighter, but essentially it was the same car, same chassis. Um, and you just kind of develop the driving style, and being a front engine, front wheel drive, I got used to slowing down before the turn, then turning in, and then foot to the floor, power through the corner.
mm,
And when I started learning to drive that car, once I converted it to all-wheel drive, I realized the characteristics were a bit different. You could kind of push it a bit more into the corner and get on the power a lot faster.
mm.
um, and then the Boxster was a whole new experience because that car was truly built for momentum. So I could come into a corner
Yeah.
a lot faster and really not slow down at all for the corner. But then coming out of the corner, you had to be pretty careful on the throttle because you give it too much and it would just spin. So
Yeah,
it's
mid
definitely like
engines.
a yeah, it was a fast in, slow out car. But then getting used to this thing was so different to me because I honestly, it feels like you're going fast into the corner and fast coming out of the corner because you come in hot and you can kind of just flick the steering wheel a little bit and get the back end to rotate. And being rear engine, all that weight is in the back, so it's gonna rotate. And then as soon
Mm.
as it starts to slide a little bit, you just punch the gas again and it straightens out because it's all-wheel drive and it just pulls itself out of the corner. So it's a really weird experience. You have to have commitment, but
Mm.
it goes.
Four-wheel drive is such a cheat code. Like once you have it, oh,
Oh yeah.
you own everything.
I know. And the Porsche purists out there, they'll always say like, well, rear engine, rear wheel drive, that's the way to go. And I mean, that's the way the GT3 RS is.
Don't
But
have
I
to.
mean, yeah, if I was on the track, okay, maybe. But on the mountain pass, I really like having all-wheel drive.
Mm. Has it been a headache to do some of the mods?
It hasn't been too bad. And I have a fairly decent amount of experience doing maintenance and
Mm.
modifications and just kind of building cars over the years. And I've definitely acquired all the tools that I would ever need. I have a lot of friends that come over, and I always tell them, like, if you can't find the tool you need in my garage, let me know because I'll go buy that tool because chances are I'm going to need that tool later. So
Mm.
we
Cool.
definitely have gotten to a point now where I feel pretty comfortable working on this car. Obviously, there's not any room in that engine bay, but I bought this car because, in my opinion, it has enough power the way it is. So I don't need to mess with the engine. So
Mm.
I've been focusing
Yeah.
on brakes and suspension, and for the most part, that's really no different than any other car.
I won't lie, I also wouldn't choose an overpowered car. In a Porsche range,
Yeah.
maybe turbo for just plain speed, like drag racing. And that other very, very interesting build also. I never, I don't know much about Volvo in the first place, I won't
Yeah.
lie. But when I saw that build, I was like, wow, radical.
Yeah. It's kind of a race car at this point.
Yeah, yeah, the C30.
Yep.
And you love Volvo. How many
Yeah.
years
So
now?
oh gosh, I've probably had 8 or 9 Volvos now over the years. And my first car was
Oh,
a
wow.
Volvo S40. My second car was a Volvo S40. My wife's first car was a Volvo 850. And from there, like I bought the Volvo C30, and that was kind of what I wanted to turn into my race car. when I first saw that car, when it first came out back in 2007, to me, that was like the obtainable dream car.
Mm.
It was really weird looking. I mean, it's a very unique car, and that's kind of what appealed to me about it. I also really liked the fact that it had a 5-cylinder turbo manual from the factory,
Mm.
and so like that was
Audi
what I
vibes.
wanted. Yeah, and for sure. And then we got the Volvo V50. I don't have any. That's obviously not here anymore. I use that for the all-wheel drive donor into my C30. But that was my
Mm.
wife's daily for a long time, a manual turbo all-wheel drive wagon, which was just cool. Had a lot of fun
That
with it.
is cool.
Yeah, and you know, if you're welcome
Most,
to pull up any pictures of it that you have if you want to share that.
mm, yeah, I'll be honest. Most Volvos that I see, and just the image of Volvo, they don't look fun at first glance.
No, not at all. Not at all. And
But
honestly,
from
even
what I hear,
driving
it's
one,
very cool.
yeah, I mean, driving a stock Volvo, it's going to be very soft. It's the comfortable luxury car, but just
Mm.
with a few modifications, I mean, you can turn them into pretty fun cars. And a lot of people don't realize, but the C30, the S40, the V50, those are all on the same chassis as the Focus ST, the Focus RS, the Mazda Speed 3.
Oh wow,
And so like it's all the suspension upgrades are available. And it's a proven chassis that's pretty good for the hatchback market.
that is interesting. I never knew that.
Yeah. So, and strangely enough, in other parts of the world, I'm not sure in your area, but like in America, we never got the 5-cylinder Focus RS, but the Volvo was essentially that same 5-cylinder Focus RS in the United States. So a lot of
No
people started picking
way.
those up.
How did you not get that?
You know, I don't know. And it's weird because like Ford is based out of America, but all the cool cars ended up overseas. We didn't get them
And it's
here.
and it's also weird because I mean, Ken Block was part of designing it.
Yeah.
Yet, I mean, it's his own country.
Right. Right. It wasn't until
Wow.
the very last generation of the Focus RS that they finally brought them here. And a lot of people were happy about that. But at that point, they were all 4-cylinders. So if you wanted
Mm.
the 5-cylinder, Volvo was your only option.
I won't lie, this very latest Ford Focus RS, I have no interest in it. Like,
Yeah, it's a heavy car, I will say.
you see, cars are getting too heavy. Hot
Yeah.
hatch is hot hatch is simplicity. Roll up the windows with those things.
Yep.
Man,
Absolutely.
I'm gonna make you choose between your two children, WRX or Porsche.
Ooh, that Porsche all day, every day.
Okay, that was quick.
Yeah, you know, I love the WRX, but for us, we never really considered this to be like a sports car. We bought it to
Mm.
be our family car. We wanted something again, turbo, manual, all-wheel drive with a back seat,
Mm.
and really the options came down to WRX, Focus RS, or a Golf R. Um, and the Golf R was just a little bit out of our price range, and the Focus RS just, like I said, didn't really appeal to us. So we got this. I do love it. If I could only have one car, this is a little bit more practical, a little bit more comfortable, but I want to have fun. So I'm definitely going to take the 911.
So you're taking your 911 and your WRX. That other orange one, is that also yours?
No, so that orange WRX that belongs to a good friend of mine.
Okay.
But yeah, it's definitely, you know, I wasn't really sold on the new style WRX when it first came out.
Mm.
But after driving his, I thought, you know, that could be a pretty good replacement for this one day.
Really? Okay.
It's a bigger car, but when you drive it, it feels very similar to this, just with some advancements, obviously, because it's like 10 years newer.
Just doing the GTR thing.
Yeah, yeah,
Does it do that? Doesn't feel like there's as much weight as there is.
right.
So what's been your best and worst moments on the mountain pass?
Oh, best and worst moments. So, best moments, I've had some pretty epic drives going with some friends. Um, and honestly, it wouldn't even be the fastest drive I ever went on, but it was a drive that we went out at nighttime. It was like midnight, and we were
Hmm.
driving the tail of the dragon, which is it's a road in America.
Yeah.
It's 318 turns in 11 miles. So you were constantly just going back and forth, and the road just snakes between the mountains.
Yeah, I've seen that,
Um,
man. I want to drive that.
it's an amazing road. And so one of my best experiences was driving that at night with about 5 or 6 friends, and all of us just like in line driving through the mountains. At the
What a
time, all
vibe.
of us were in Volvo C30s. And so that right there kind of made it special because like we all kind of had about the same amount of power, the same brakes, so we were all doing the exact same thing. As soon as one person accelerates, all of us in line would accelerate. And like there was just a little bit of fog rolling in. Like it was like a scene out of Fast and Furious or something. It was just this magical moment. And it
Wow.
wasn't, like I said, it wasn't the fastest run, but in my mind, I'll always remember that because it was just clean, fun, and just a great driving experience.
Yeah, it
Um,
sounds special.
I'll, I'll say the worst experience. We were up just driving in the mountains, and there was a friend of mine who was in a pretty bad accident. They were one of the last ones in the line, and just completely missed a turn. I don't know really what happened because we didn't see it firsthand, but we got to a rest stop up at the end, and we were just kind of waiting. And some of us were going pretty fast. We thought, yeah, they might just have fallen behind. And then somebody came up and said, hey, they crashed. And so it was like a panic moment. Get down there, make sure
Man.
they were okay. And I just remember pulling up and seeing their car completely upside down, and just like it definitely, I think, made all of us slow down a little bit. Um, just be careful, and just remember that we have to be safe. It's fun to go out there and drive fast, but the most important thing is to be able to drive home. And
Mm,
so
mm.
definitely, I always think about that. And every time I pass that point on the mountain, I always slow down a little bit and just remember what happened. But thankfully, they were okay. Ended up buying another car, and they're
Yeah,
still out there having fun with us.
that's cool. Yeah, that's the most important thing. They're fine.
Yeah.
So you're saying you just missed the turn, like got out of rhythm, and then it was over.
Yeah, and it was again, it was another drive at nighttime, and I don't know if they were falling behind from the rest of the group, and so they may have seen us coming in pretty quick, and we just shoot around that corner. And on their particular car, their tires weren't quite as wide. I think they were on all season
Ah,
tires, and we're on like our compound tires. So this kind of probably had the mindset of if they went through that this fast, I can too, and then like went to turn, and the car just kept going straight.
that sounds so initial, D. If they can, then I can too.
Yeah. Yeah, that's one of the things I always remind people when we go
I
out there
literally
and
remember
drive
that
too.
line.
It's like, yeah, it's like just because you have the same car, the same tires, same brakes, it doesn't mean your car can do the same thing as the one in front of you.
Mm,
Yeah,
yeah, that's also. It's not just about ties. That's also about the driver.
it is. Yeah, and it's having
Mm,
that understanding of what to do when the car starts to slide and how to correct it in certain ways. And I always tell people like, don't don't push it on the mountain. Like if you're gonna go out there, never drive 10 for 10 when you're on a public road. Like always dial it back
mm,
and make sure you have what I call an out. Like you have a way to save yourself if an animal darts in front of you, or if an oncoming
mm.
car is in your lane or anything. Make sure you have that ability to be able to get out of the way. And you might not be able to save your car necessarily, but the idea is you can save yourself.
Yeah, and not kill someone else.
Exactly. Yeah.
Safety margins.
Yep.
So, when did you start driving fast? Whether it was in a car, in your Volvo, or in a go-kart, or on a simulation?
So probably started when I was about 13 years old playing Gran Turismo 3. I got like the
OG.
pedal yeah, I got the pedal and steering wheels, and like it just I had a blast, and like that's all I did. And I mean, I guess you could call that sim racing. That was kind of like the early days of
Mm,
sim racing back on the PlayStation 2. But then like once I started driving, the first car that I drove, it was my mom's Volkswagen Passat wagon. and it was like a 1.8 turbo. Like it wasn't fast at all. But to me, like 15, 16 years old, I thought, oh yeah, it's a turbo. It makes turbo noises. This thing is fast. And like we would hit some twisty roads in the area, but I don't think I really appreciated driving for what it was until probably about 2012, 2013. And that's when I started getting more involved in some of the car clubs, started doing autocross events, and that bug bit me, and I'm like, that's
Wow.
it. Like I have to do this. And so I started,
Mm,
excuse me, started doing modifications, and yeah, it's a slippery slope. Got pretty expensive pretty fast.
yeah. Racing's a money pit.
Yeah.
But it's a good cause, so it's justified.
Huh?
So in driving, what would you say are a few very important, let's say three most important main factors in going fast, stretching out the limit, and being safe while going fast?
So on the mountain road, first and foremost, always keep your lane. Um, Especially in this area
Hmm.
where I live, we have a lot of blind corners, and it's just stay in your lane. You don't know if there's a car coming in the other way, or a motorcycle, or even like cyclists that are out there. And part of that, to me, I mean, that's where you can kind of develop your skill and challenge, because anybody could use the whole road, but to be able to drive quick and keep your car within that 9 foot, 10 foot wide lane, that takes
Mm,
some skill. So that's obviously for safety the most important thing. Like I said, I always try to make sure if I'm on the mountain road that I'm dialing it back, so I'm only driving at 70% of what I think the car is capable of, and that way I'm safe enough that I do have a way to get out of something if it happens. But
mm,
over time, your skill's going to continue to improve, and so that 70% is going to become faster and faster and faster. And I know right now, like I can cruise with like one arm hanging out the window, it's one arm on the wheel, and I'm just going. And then some of
Takumi.
my right, but then I have some friends who are fairly new to driving in the mountains that might be following me, and for them it's like they're giving it all they have just to keep up with that pace.
Oh
um,
yeah.
but then as far as like just driving and trying to continue to improve, I think obviously learn to set up the car the way you need to. You're going to have to spend some money and spend some time getting a good understanding of what that means. In the case of this car, I just put shocks, struts, lowering springs, and basically called it a day. But like on my 987, I put coilovers on that car. And so I had to spend time corner balancing it to make sure the weight was right, front to back, and also left
Mm,
to right. Spent a lot of time with the adjustable dampers trying to make sure like compression and rebound were exactly where I wanted it. And it was like I was always tweaking things. And like I go to an
that's
autocross event,
dope.
and it's like, yeah, you want to make things super stiff when you're autocrossing. And then I go to a track that has like an oval bank, and it's like, okay, well, I need things to be a little bit softer, because otherwise, you're too stiff and it starts to step out on you. But
Hmm.
then you go drive the mountain roads, and there's like, there's dips and cracks in the pavement and stuff, and then you want to soften it up a bit. So it's like it's trying to find that good balance. And for people who are modifying their cars, I think take your time to learn what you need. Don't just buy every modification that's out there and throw it on the car, because then you're going to be left with a car that's essentially undrivable. Like I always tell
Yeah,
people, like learn to drive your car in stock form, and then upgrade the suspension, upgrade the brakes, upgrade sway bars, like one thing at a time, and you'll really appreciate what those modifications do for your car, and you'll learn how to drive even better with those modifications. And you'll also have something to look forward to. So once you kind of learn how the car handles with lowering springs or coilovers, then you can go get sway bars and then put those on and learn how the car handles with the sway bars, and just keep stepping it up incrementally.
exactly. Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
Yeah, people depend too much on modifications,
Yeah.
don't they? So then that mountain pass driving, like you said, the the thing of driving only in the one lane and finding your skills in that, I'm sure that helps with autocross.
Oh, definitely. Yeah, because as soon as you go to autocross, I mean, some of those circuits are so tight when you're going between the cones, you basically only have one lane. And so like, I mean,
Mm,
that's what I'm used to, is trying to keep it just within that narrow little path. But then when I do track days and stuff, it's like, wow, I've got a massive track I can use. I can actually, hit the apex. I'm way over here, and then you transition all the way over, which would be like going over 3 lanes. Then you're on the apex over here. So it's definitely a different experience. And I think like Initial D, I've noticed that some of the fastest people on the track started on the mountain. They started on the Touge, and they develop their skill set. And then you get to the environment on the track, and it's like the pavement is smooth. You have, everybody's going in one direction. It's like it's a lot easier. Whereas I have a lot of friends who are very active, attending track days and stuff, and they are some of the best drivers I've ever met. I can't keep up with them on track, but as soon as you put them on the mountain road, like they tense up and they get nervous because it's like, okay, well, there's no
Yeah.
like grass or runoff area if I go off the pavement, and so they definitely dial it back. So I think starting on the mountain road kind of gives you a little bit more of a, I don't know, I guess you're a little more dangerous. I guess willing to take greater risks.
More skills. Okay, Takumi. Wow, that's interesting. And the Dragon, is that the only mountain pass you've usually like gone to over many times?
As far as like famous roads, that yes, the Tail of the Dragon is probably one of the more well-known ones. Um,
Mm.
where I live in Georgia, we have a bunch of great roads. Locals refer to them as like Blood Mountain, Six Gap, because you're passing through a bunch of like mountain passes. And honestly, for me, like those are even better than the Tail of the Dragon, because the Tail of the Dragon has become so like almost commercialized over the years. I mean, you get to the end and there's a store where they sell t-shirts and stickers, and there's photographers
Oh
out on the
man.
Dragon taking pictures, and it's really cool. But at the same time, it's like there's people who flock to that area just because it's a tourist area, where I have some equally great roads right here in my backyard that people don't know about. So I like to go out and play on those.
Yeah, that's cool. Less saturated. No
Yeah,
fans.
exactly. Exactly.
How's the ratio to how much bumps can unsettle you and how much cambers and undulations can unsettle you?
Um, it depends on a lot of the roads. So the ones that I have here, like the pavement is really smooth, and you can go out there and it's fantastic. Like you get into that driving rhythm, and like you make a left turn and your
Mm.
next turn's going to go right, and then your next turn's going to go left. And so
Mm.
it's like you're always kind of just in that motion of, all right, I took a left turn, I'm preparing for the right, and you just kind of go back and forth. And that's why it's really fun too to drive with friends, because you're just in this snake kind of going through with a bunch
Mm.
of cars. But there are some areas, including up near the Tail of the Dragon, where they haven't repaved those roads in probably 10 years or longer, and things can get pretty rough. So if you're going out there with a suspension that's set up for the track, like it's going to throw you around and it'll unsettle the car. But if you're
Mm.
going with a suspension that's set up for the street, then it's going to be a little more forgiving. And I think that's where this car really shines, because, like compared to a GT3 RS, it is a lot softer and it's going to absorb those bumps a lot better. So, it might not be quite as stiff going around a corner. It might be a little more sloppy, but at the same time, if I hit a bump halfway through a turn, it's not just going to cause the car to spin out.
I thought so. I thought that was a smart choice.
Yeah. For my driving style and the roads I drive, I don't think I could have chosen a better car personally.
Mm. I hope you really enjoyed this episode. Be sure to subscribe to Michael's channel. You know what the name is. It's My Name Ideas Were Taken. Check your petrol heads.